All right, welcome back, everybody, to another episode of the Reputation Igniter podcast. We are so glad to have you here, and I'm really excited about our guest today, Kyle Gargaro of ACHR News. He is the editorial director, so he is in charge of just about everything that goes out there. So if you're having an issue with one of those stories, you can talk to him. But just kidding. Thanks for being on, Kyle. I appreciate you.
No, thanks for having me, Chris. Excited to, I love the show and excited to talk with you a little bit.
Appreciate it. Thank you. And so, as you know, if you're listening, please do like, subscribe, hit that notification bell, write a review if you feel so inclined. We are always looking to serve you, the HVAC owner out there in the trenches, trying to serve our communities. I designed and created this podcast not just to bring you amazing, incredible, intellectual guests like Kyle here, who just have a 32,000-foot view on what's going on as a leading expert in the field, but to more importantly, bring the stories of our HVAC owners that are out there in our local communities that are serving people, because mainstream media has demonized, for whatever reason and whatever agenda, the entrepreneurial individual is a money hungry, greedy person, when in reality we know that you guys are just trying to put food on the table for your family. You are trying to keep the roof over the heads of every single one of your employees, and you're trying to tirelessly serve your community with a better service and product delivered to them. And so we want to help support you, bringing other people just like yourself and having them share their zone of genius so that you can improve your business. And so with that, let's go ahead. Let's dive in. Kyle, again, thank you for being on. One of the things we had kind of talked about when we initially connected about doing a podcast together was talking about the shift that's happening in the market. Now, I think that, the economy is something that we're always looking at. It doesn't matter what business or what industry you're in. You're always trying to think about, hey, how do I anticipate the changes that are coming? And one of the things that you kind of mentioned is what you're seeing. And I'd love to hear just kind of your data, the experience, that the articles that are being submitted or written by you and your team about this shift where we're going. And I think a lot of people know this. We're going from the replacement market to more of a repair market. Can you share or shed some light on that, and maybe how an HVAC owner could maybe prepare or be intellectually competent about what next steps would be best for their business here?
Sure thing. We just to identify it first, right? We just go, at least at the news, ACHR News, we look at the HRI shipments. They give the shipment numbers. So we don't have numbers on what's actually getting installed, but hey, what's going to the distributor gives us a pretty good idea on how the market's going and if people are going to, repair or replace. I'm sure your audience knows the last few years, specifically the COVID years, were really good on the replacement factor, right? People were spending a lot of time in their homes, They had, money burning in their pocket that the government was giving out. And they weren't going out to eat. They weren't going on vacation. They were investing in their home. And that actually combined with, when you look at the HRI numbers, it's cyclical, right? Every 15, 20 years. If you look back 15 or 20 years, what the market was doing then is kind of what it's going to do now, unless there's a crazy economic issue or something of that sort, because that's when these products die, right?
Yep.
So 2005, 2006 were great years. Then obviously there was a little bit of a crash in 08 and 09. So fast forward to 2020, when all the things that I just mentioned were happening, there was also a lot of product out there that was about 15 years old and ready to be replaced. So that was a big part of it. Now we blew through that a little bit, and now when you go back 15 years, right, from 2014, now we're in 2009, which the numbers were a lot lower. So not as many now need to be replaced. It makes more sense for them to repair. Actually, I just picked this up a couple weeks ago. I was at an event in Orlando, and they said with all the private equity money coming into so these contractors getting purchased, it was CEO Warrior that had this event. I feel like if I'm stealing their facts or their information, I should at least give them credit.
Sure.
But obviously, private equity came in and they were pushing, and they had processes in place to get everyone to replace rather than repair. So it's even expedited even more replacements than might have been done the last couple of years. And it's just kind of pulling forward, right? It's pulling forward a product that might get repaired now and replaced in 2 or 3 years. Well, we pulled it forward, so that's not there right now. How they deal with it, you just have to train your staff to make sure. I mean, there's money in repair, right? Obviously, there's higher margins in replacement, but there's also money in repair. So if you are doing it correctly, you're selling it correctly, and you're doing a better job than your competitors, there's still a place for you to be profitable here. If that's where you know your focus is, and you make sure you're doing it the correct way. I know I'm just kind of talking a lot here, but one other point on this that I thought was interesting, that we actually had a webinar on ACHRnews.com, and Billy Stevens, who runs Sarah Systems and also a contractor down in Dallas,
Yep.
he does a third option. It's called the refresh. He goes, repair, replace, refresh. So it's when a product is about 6 to 10 years old. I think he charges like $5,000, so kind of more than it would be to repair, less than it would be to replace, and he kind of does an entire facelift on it. Checks everything, and obviously we're not changing out compressors or anything like that, but
Sure.
updating everything in it. He said it's highly profitable for him. He has like a 75% profit percentage on it, and it makes the homeowners are ready to do that. Oh, you're actually saving me money because I don't have to spend $10,000 to $12,000 on the replacement. I can do this for $6,000, and I'm getting another 10 years out of it. It kind of makes sense. So I thought that was interesting. I always heard the replace versus repair, and now refresh is maybe something new that the contractors listening could add to the docket.
Yeah, I mean, Billy is definitely innovative, and I feel like the 45 minutes I had him on my show wasn't enough to pull all the all the insight and the wisdom out of him. But I love that. I think that's definitely something worth looking into, and maybe I'll get him on for another episode where he can deep dive into that. But maybe he wants to keep his secret sauce. I totally understand it. But to your point, I think that, and I think we all know this, right? Is like, it's actually in the downturns, right, where entrepreneurs get most innovative. And as a result, those things will drive innovation. And I mean, there's always going to be fallout. There's always going to be, people who just can't kind of keep business together, and maybe they shouldn't have been in business, to start with, or maybe they made some poor decisions, right? But if you can be forward thinking and take opportunities like that to just kind of adjust, right, or tweak or retool some of the systems and processes you have in place, it's pretty powerful. So
I would say, I'm sorry, Chris.
No, go ahead, Kyle.
Okay, no, I was also going to say, because when it's the downturn, that's when you can improve market share. When there's always there's always a silver lining to everything. So I just want to make sure the contractors keep on doing the marketing, keep on doing the advertising, even in a downturn. That's an easy thing to cut when revenue's going down a little bit. But there's that famous, what's the serial example of Kellogg's and Post, when they're going, like it used to be Post and then Kellogg's, and then going into the Great Depression, Kellogg's kept on advertising and Post didn't, and then their market shares flipped, and the rest is history.
Well, yeah, I think to your point, that's, marketing, and that's my world, right? That's the first line item. It's like, we don't really need that, right? That's an expense. It's like, well, arguably, if you just kept your marketing the same, you didn't even increase it, right? Theoretically, you're increasing it because all your competitors are decreasing it, right? So by essence, like, whatever you're doing is actually being doubled in its effort. I think the other piece too, right, is like, just because they got a replacement from some other company, right, doesn't mean necessarily that they wanted a membership from that, or that person, because sometimes some people are so quick to replace, and they just kind of, it's a wham bam, thank you ma'am, like, and you get a lot of chuck in the trucks just kind of coming and doing that stuff. Well, they're not thinking long-term vision, right? And most people aren't on a membership of some sort, right? And that's another thing that Billy Stevens talks about all the time, right? Is like having a membership. And I've got a guest that's coming onto the show, and he's going to talk about his zone of genius, which is building a membership program and how to execute that, and just the right process. So I won't steal any of his thunder, but it's so important to think, like, don't think that you're locked out of these opportunities just because they got a big system install done by somebody else. Doesn't mean that they're following up, or they've got them on any sort of agreement. And I know that's another thing that we're going to talk about towards the end of the show. So a lot of opportunity. And I agree with you. This is an easy time to get a lot more, like, FaceTime, publicity, brand awareness for pretty much the same dollar. And the other thing you have to understand is those marketing companies are going to be hurting because most of them are pulling away. So you could probably, arguably argue for a better price, depending obviously on what, marketing you're choosing. Some just are kind of fixed in that realm, but it's because of the effort. So
that's a good point, because in HVAC, a lot of times it's the person that's the quickest is going to get the job, not actually the best or the best marketing. It's like, geez, I'm in Michigan in January, my furnace goes out, or you're in Arizona, someone's in Arizona and your air conditioning goes out in July. It's who's the quickest, but that customer can still be up for grabs a month or two later.
Yeah.
Especially if the one guy in the truck didn't do a great job.
Yeah. Yeah, well, it's like it's the tail light guarantee, right? Like I guarantee it until you can't see my tail lights anymore, right? So I think there's definitely that sort of aspect of things. And yeah, I preach that a lot, Kyle, which is what you're talking about. Is like speed to lead, right? Like Google shows three results in the map pack, right? They're going to call the one with the highest reviews first, and then they go down the order. And if you're third on the list, but you answer first, you get the business, right? So I love it. Let's kind of shift gears. One of the other things, obviously it's a huge pain point for a lot of my clients and a lot of my listeners, right, is just, and you call it workforce development, which I like, but, talking about hiring people and retaining people, especially as we're kind of maybe going into a repair market, right? And I think, most people think, oh man, I want to retain my sales guys. I want to keep my techs busy. And the sales guys go, well, I don't get as much money out of the repairs as I do out of the replacements, right? Because those are bigger tickets. It just, you get excited about those bigger numbers, right? So what maybe, the thinking or maybe the prep, and it doesn't necessarily just gotta, focus on the salespeople and the techs, but maybe, office staff as well. What have you guys been starting to see maybe as trends or best practices that are kind of coming across your table that people are implementing? Because it seems like you definitely do have your ear to the ground. I'm glad I'm a subscriber to your guys's news magazine for sure.
We try. Well, I appreciate how you frame the question there, Chris, because I think a lot of contractors we talk to fall in the trap. Like, got to hire, and they forget about the retain part of it, and make sure they're keeping their people happy, and then not having to replace as much. But we'll start with the recruitment part of it, and one is being connected to trade schools, right? Help out, be an advisory board member to a trade school in your area, so you can kind of get first dibs at the cream of the crop that is coming out. So that's a big thing that the contractors can do. And the other thing is, I always talk about this, is it's right there, right? Recruitment. Well, how does Alabama or Michigan, or I guess, but before NIL, they just give them money. How do they recruit? It's the weight room. It's the the buffet, the locker room, and that kind of stuff. So think about that when you're bringing in prospective employees. What can you kind of do from? You can do easy stuff. A video game room. I don't know how much a PlayStation or an Xbox or whatever costs, $200, whatever, $500, but put that in a couple beanbag chairs that people can, goof off after hours or something. That's a pretty, it's something that's going to resonate when they come in that maybe other people aren't doing. Maybe, hey, we do breakfast twice a week. How much does that cost, right? Flipping a few pancakes, get a griddle or whatever it is. So things that can separate you from other folks, your other competitors, that's not breaking the bank, makes a big deal. If they interview with, 3 people, and, when I was getting my first job, I wasn't as concerned during the interview process, but okay, what's the company culture? What's the management like, and that kind of stuff. I would have been mesmerized by pancakes and video games, at age 22, whatever. But it's the things that distinguish you from other people, from your competitors. That's going to go a long way on the recruitment process. The other one good with recruitment is a bonus program. I see a lot more contractors doing, where you're getting paid if you bring somebody into the organization. And I've seen it, $500 to $1,000 to $2,000. A couple things. First, if your friends start working there, that person's less likely to leave. And they're vetting them a little bit better. And a lot of the contractors doing, it's not just a one-time thing. If, if I bring somebody in, the first year I get $2,000, and the second year they get $2,000. If you ask a contractor, would you pay an extra $2,000 to keep a good tech for another year? It'd be a no-brainer. So why not, pay the person that brought him in and is more apt to say, hey, come on, stick around. It's either not that bad or it's pretty good here, or grass isn't always green. You almost have an ally on the ground floor for you to help you retain those employers. So that's a little bit on the retain and the recruitment. But the retain part of it, kind of like I'm probably preaching to the choir. Everyone kind of know, like make it a family atmosphere. It's hard with HVAC. It's a tough job. But I know there's a contractor here in Michigan that was always 24/7 and then wasn't anymore. Like they cut down on the after hours just because sure they're giving up a little bit of money, but they're saving it because they're not burning through techs as much. And it's almost back in the day it was almost, hey, just constantly chasing the dollars. Now I think contractors are starting to realize, no, we got to get our house in order and make sure we're not costing ourselves a lot of money by bringing in a little bit extra money. If that makes sense.
Yeah. No, I love it. And there's a lot there that you were talking about. And I think number one is that culture, right? And a lot of people go, well, how do you create culture? And, I think a lot of people think that it's like, oh, it's like the words that you say. And it's like, no, it's more about the time you spend together and how do you spend it, right? Is it somebody yelling at everybody, right? Or is it somebody that, like, are you communing in a way, right? Like you're saying, like having a pancake breakfast where it truly needs to be a relaxed environment, right? It shouldn't be something where everybody just goes to one table, gets the pancakes, then goes to their desk and just kind of huddles away, right? I think that's such an important piece to it. And the other piece that, like, in terms of attracting people, and this is something I was just talking with Thaddeus and Evan on their show actually yesterday that we recorded, HVAC Uncensored. Definitely a good podcast to check out, guys. And we were talking about just the importance of reviews in hiring, right? Because you got to realize that, like, everybody looks at reviews these days, right? So if your business doesn't have them or has poor ones, like that should be something you're addressing. Like if you're wondering why your talent pool that you're pulling from is kind of crummy, it's because all-stars don't want to come to a business that doesn't seem to have a good reputation or doesn't at least showcase themselves in a way that shows that they're a company on the grow, that they're evolving, that they're, cutting edge or whatever, right? So it's like first line of defense is like, hey, what's your first impression to this person? Because, the guy and gal who's being spiffed to bring you on, right? Like, yes, they can talk to their friend, but their friend's going to go online, right? Because they're probably thinking you're getting incentivized anyways to talk to me, which is cool. And I'm okay with that, right? But like, what's in it for you? Or, let me see if this place is really as cool as you think it is, right? And so they're going to go online. They're going to trust a whole bunch of people who are anonymous, right? Who don't have an agenda to kind of figure out, hey, is this a good organization that I want to be in? And then coming to it. And I love, like you're saying, I've seen it. It's actually just like not in our industry, but it's like when my wife used to work in healthcare, they'd always want to spiff you for bringing somebody in. Now, it used to be really cheap where they would go, it's $50 or $100 if you bring somebody in. But I think people have realized the cost of hiring somebody, to your point, that like, $2,000, like, when you really rack up, the amount of money you're going to spend, putting money out on the job boards, your staff being distracted by the hiring process themselves, that's all man hours that you're paying them for, right? And then on top of it, your time, right? Your time, you're worrying, you're thinking about trying to find somebody. And the great thing is like people, what is it, like 50% of people lie on their resumes. So it's like half of the stuff they're giving you is bogus anyways, right? So like if you've got somebody who's vouching for them, it's a totally different. They know them outside of work, right? So they know what kind of person they are on quote unquote social media, right? Even if they just disbanded their profile so you couldn't find it when you're trying to hire them, kind of thing. Because there's people are smart, man. And so I love that idea. And then the retention thing of saying, hey, I'll give you $2,000 when they sign up, and then when they hit their first year anniversary, it's $1,000, and then their third year it's $500. Like, dude, I'm incentivized. You just told me I could make $3,500 by saying, hey, my friend should come over here. And techs know other techs, right? Like you just, so that's brilliant. I love that. That is a good piece of advice. I appreciate that, Kyle.
and it's a good point on that you brought up on the reviews there, Chris, because and then also, the younger generation, they want to be a part of an organization that is doing good things, doing charitable work, and like, quote unquote kind of changing the world. They don't want to get online and figure that you were, swindling grandma out of, her retirement because you were placed in a 3-year-old system. So I think I think that's a good point, and you're right on with how culture is so important. There's a contractor here in Metro Detroit, Flame Furnace Gary. He says, and it's a big company, but he calls everyone on their birthday. Every employee he calls, and he goes, it doesn't take very long, right? It's a minute and a half phone call, but it's amazing how everyone, I don't know. I don't get it because I'm not a big birthday guy. Everyone has a birthday, but a lot of people like really embrace their birthday and love it. If the owner, is calling the receptionist or a tech and say, "Hey, I just want to say happy birthday," it makes you feel good and it makes you feel part of the team.
Yeah, after you clean up your pants from getting the call from the owner, right? Like, oh my gosh, what is this?
Exactly.
Just
don't do it Friday afternoon, right?
Yeah, right, yeah. Exactly. Please don't fire me on my birthday. That's the worst thing. No, I'm just calling to tell you did a great job. Okay, I gotta go clean myself up, right? Oh, that's pretty funny. Well, and then Church Blissett was actually on here earlier. He's he runs Service Business Mastery podcast, and he's got 2 HVAC companies out in South Carolina, he's in Savannah, Georgia. So, but he's got one that's like higher end and one that's sort of like volume. But what he was saying that he does is he collects all this information on his employees, and obviously not in like a probing way, but just in like a kind of, and he's got all these systems and he's got VAs, right? So he's got, he's paying a couple of, Filipino VAs to kind of just support this whole back end stuff. But he will send like flowers on the anniversary for techs, right? So these guys are out there busting their hump. They're going to forget, right? Like all men, like as many alarms and as many like, things I can put in my calendar, like just life just takes over sometimes, but they'll send flowers. And so like the tech will come home and the wife will just be like, thank you so much for the flowers. And if the tech's smart, he just plays cool with it. And then he realizes the next day that it was, Tersh and company, like putting that on. And it's just these little things. Again, how much does flowers cost, right? Like a $50 bouquet of flowers, dude, can change somebody's marriage, right? Like you don't know what they're going through, in a certain point of time. And so, like you said, just a simple phone call sometimes, it might be one of those things like somebody's thinking of quitting because they feel like they're not even noticed. And then the owner calls and says, hey, just so you know, I pay enough attention that I know your birthday. So I love it. There's so many like, little freebies you can do.
I'm sorry, Chris. Here's a similar one of the flowers that I heard a contractor do. If someone's obviously, there are late hours and after hours, and or these techs are working long and hard, and they're rewarded financially, which is great. But the contractor said if that was the case, he had to work a couple nights. I send a gift card to the wife, $50, $100, or whatever, to whatever, and to say, hey, because you forget that. Sure, he's working hard, but there's people at home that are missing him too. Maybe he's missing a football game or basketball game or a dance recital, or the wife has to cook dinner every night or whatever it is. But just say, an effort, a gesture to the wife, and we all know, right? That's, and if the guy comes home and is complaining about the job, maybe the wife talks you up a little bit and kind of helps, curb some of the anger too. That's that's how we're, rather than feed into it. So again, just I know we're kind of going around on different ideas, but just it doesn't have to be big. You don't have to buy take the whole team to the Bahamas, or buy a new car or something like that. The small stuff can really register.
I want to think to your point, right? Like as much as you might be excited to give them like a $2 an hour raise or something like that, like just if you're really paying that much attention, just holding a little bit back, because at the end of the day, people just want to feel wanted. Right. And yes, the grass is always going to be greener. Somebody can get 50 cents more, but they're going to stay where they feel cared about, thought about. And so like all of those gestures, like you're saying, are so important. And I think, and my hope is that America kind of refines our way. But to your point is like, you're employing a family unit is really what you're employing, right? You happen to have one part of that family unit producing the work, but somebody else is at home, right? And it can be the flip too, right? Like you could have a female tech and the husband's the stay-at-home dad or whatever. And so just understanding that like you're literally, and we all know this, and this is why you guys are doing such great jobs in the community, right? Is like you understand that these are families. These aren't just, it's not a robot, right? These, AI isn't doing our jobs yet, right? So it's important to understand the whole holistic nature of like what you're doing. And I think companies that do that will really, I mean, I think that somebody who can take that little extra effort, those are the companies that are going to stick it out through good times and bad times, and that's going to show too. I think that's the other piece. Like in the military, we always had that whole saying, right? Like the beatings will continue until morale improves, right? And so it's like it's one of those things. Like you really got to think about, if you want people to treat your customers better, you need to treat them better first, because how they treat the customer is going to be a reflection of how you're treating them, right? So, but we're probably
Because that $2 raise that you were talking about, the $2 raise
Yep.
you were talking about will be forgotten in 6 weeks.
Absolutely.
It'll just be kind of part of their life, where that gift card or that phone call or something is still going to resonate.
Exactly. I love that you reemphasize that, because that is an important piece. So, well, you just kind of mentioned kind of what we're kind of moving into there is, you guys just did a survey. You did a pretty extensive survey. It was pretty awesome and pretty impressive. Can you talk about that recent survey? There's, kind of 3 components that we said that I think are important for contractors to kind of understand, and maybe just pulling out it. I don't know if you know the stats off the top of your head, but maybe we can either point people to it, and I can put a link in the description, but maybe just hitting some of the highlights, because I know you guys invested quite a bit in having a third party do this survey, and there was some interesting information that I think is very important for HVAC owners.
Yeah, no, and I did my homework, Chris. I do have a few stats here on the 3 items, though, because I would not remember. I did. Let's be honest, I wouldn't remember. So what we decided to do, we want to do some research, and to provide a value to our subscribers and members, and we thought, well, what we wanted to do is talk to contractors and then talk to homeowners on a plethora of items and see where the disconnect is. So contractors can kind of look over the information and go, oh, geez, I didn't know that's what a homeowner wants, or that's where a homeowner's finding us, or that's what they expect of my service. So they can, and maybe they read some of the stuff and say, well, that's unrealistic. There's no way I can, if I sell you something, I can't replace it in an hour. I need to, come back in a couple of days. I can't solve all the supply chain issues. But there are, and the ones that we jotted down, we kind of talked about, were a few maybe low hanging fruit ones that they could do. So I guess I'll start off with online pricing, which is I know a touchy subject in the HVAC world. So maybe I should have left that for last, but I'm kicking off with it. It said 71% of homeowners are more likely to call contractors that list prices on their website, and only 20% of contractors list prices on their website. And I thought maybe that 20% is even high. I think that's factoring in maybe people that are putting like their maintenance agreements and maybe thermostats and stuff on. I don't know how many people are putting down, furnaces and air conditioners prices.
Well, so maybe you can talk a little bit about why, what is that signaling maybe to the customer, so that we can understand, because I get it. There's a lot of heartburn, right? Prices of products fluctuate, labor, changes. What do you think's behind that element? Sorry to kind of stop you as you're going through these, but I think that's
sure. No, that's right. But behind why contractors don't want to do it, or why homeowners want to do it, or both?
Well, why homeowners want to do it. I think it's just important for the audience to understand, get in the head of the consumer, because as much as you'd like to ask your customer's not going to be. I mean, some will be forthright. If you're in the Northeast, they probably will. If you're back in Seattle, they're probably not going to tell you much. They're just going to tell you you're great, right?
Right.
Leave you be.
I think it is because sometimes we forget this. People maybe buy HVAC 2 times in their life, maybe 3 times. It's not something that I know how much the Jets pizza costs. I know, how much a gallon of milk costs. You do it on a consistent basis, but you don't for HVAC. So they have no idea. I mean, I'm guessing if you ask people how much is a new air conditioner, somebody might say 2,000 and somebody might say 25,000. I just think they really have no idea. So, and part of the job for a contractor going in is to get all the uncertainty out of it. That's why contractors are making more of an effort to send a picture of the tech, say his name. This is what's going to happen. You want to make it as less stressful as possible on the people in the house, because they're already nervous. My HVAC broke. There's someone, I'm not quite sure about this company. There's some guy coming in his house. I'm not quite sure how long he's going to be here, or what it's going to be, or that sort of thing. So I think it's almost like I like to link it to cars, right?
Mhm.
you kind of know how much that Ford truck is going to cost when you go in. You can go on their website. You can kind of see, okay,
Yep.
it's about $35,000, 44. But you don't know the exact price. You don't
Right.
know what bells and whistles you're getting on it. So you don't know as an HVAC contractor how much. You don't know. You haven't done a load calculation yet. You don't know how big the system is. You don't know how good their ductwork is. You don't know if they're going to want a humidifier or dehumidifier or whatever for IEQ. But there's kind of a meeting in the middle where this is the ballpark. You can probably expect it to be between 8 and 12,000 unless you get this and this. So just the reason homeowners want it is because they really have no idea, and it's just they're not comfortable until and it right. It's at the kitchen table, where's that awkward moment where it
Yeah.
gets revealed. Just
Yeah.
trying to prevent that from happening. And I get it from the contractor side. Like, I don't want my competitors seeing my price, or I don't want them not calling me because they think the price is too high. So what I'd advise people to do is start it on a smaller scale to see if it works. Like, there's no reason your service agreements or maintenance agreement shouldn't be on your. You should be able to buy it on your website. To be honest, like, why are you
Yeah.
making somebody see it on your website, look it up, call you, see how much it is, and then make the purchase? But do thermostats or filters would be a nice, easy one to maybe at least so they're buying it from you instead of Home Depot or Lowe's. So I get why contractors are nervous about it, but homeowners are expecting it because think about it. In what other aspect do they not get it?
Yeah.
They go on
Yeah.
Amazon and they
It's right there.
anything's at their fingertips. So this is the one. We're not going to be the unicorn. We're not going to be the one industry that's not providing the numbers.
Yeah, well, I think to your point too, like you can give ballparks and ranges, and for the things that are like smaller and are known, like yeah, why not waste your dispatcher's time if somebody can purchase a membership online, right? Be like, wow, these is actually cool. This makes sense. I want to do this. Like I think also like we feel less pressured. It's like more like we're buying something instead of being sold something, right? And that's an
Yep.
adage I've
Yep.
always lived by is people love to buy, but they hate to be sold, right? So it's like the more you can give them the
Right.
opportunity to like buy things, right? The happier they're going to be, especially if they feel like they got a good deal on that. And I get not wanting to be shopped around, but it's just again, it breeds transparency and trust, and that's really the biggest thing. Not only that, but like people are also going to be more pre-sold when they call you if they feel like they kind of have an understanding of what that price is going to be over the ballpark, right? So
And again, from the contractors, like, well, if I put what the Nest thermostat costs, that's not what I'm charging because I have labor, I have
right.
overhead. It's like I because consumers can kind of be annoying like that, right? Like I go to
Yeah,
the bar and I
absolutely.
realize I'm buying $5 for that pint when I can get a
Yeah.
12-pack for $15 or whatever. But I also realize they're employing people, they have insurance, they're paying rent on this
Yeah.
place. Like I'm buying the experience, and what homeowners are buying is to make sure that product is installed correctly and working correctly and warranty is correctly and that kind of stuff. But I can see how they get some phone calls. Why you charge me
Yeah.
$275 for this product when on Amazon it's 125.
Yep, exactly.
Yep.
All right, well, I stopped you. What's number 2 there?
Number two is online reviews.
Hmm.
Homeowners think they're essential. When they selecting a contractor, 92% do go to online reviews. Only 39% of contractors put any reviews on their website. Now, obviously, sometimes like people can look at online reviews on their website and think, "Oh, Jesus, it's on your website. How much control do you have over it, and that sort of thing." But at least it is showing a little transparency. And I know,
Yeah.
probably preaching to the choir. You probably talked about this before with other guests. That it's good to have a couple bad reviews. Because if
Yeah.
they're all 5-star, they're all great. Like, well, people don't kind of believe that. And while it's important to do Google reviews for SEO and all the other sites, it's also important to put it on your website so people know, hey, we are listening to our customers. And I was kind of surprised that only or the 39% do not do that. Contractors do not do that.
Yeah, I mean, I think if you're listening to, just like understand there's so many widgets out there that you can put on your WordPress website to showcase these reviews, right? And I think the important piece that people have to understand is like, you don't want testimonials, right? You don't want it like hard coded into your website. Kind of that, Kyle, that's what you're kind of like, referring to is like, yeah, people don't trust testimonials anymore. So you literally have to have some sort of widget that, scrolls the reviews across and then also lets them click on the review, and that review will take them to Google, to the third party. And that's what I always talk about. It's like, you need the third party validation, because if you don't have it, then people don't trust it, right? Like that ended in 2000, where you could like type up a review, a referral or a review from somebody. And it would be like trusted. Now it's like, no. Like if it doesn't have Google next to it, Facebook next to it, Yelp next to it, like I don't trust it, right? And so it's important to have one of these widgets, because I just don't want people putting in all the effort of like putting a bunch of reviews on their website only to realize like people still don't trust it or they don't look at it, right? And you have to understand like,
Sure,
all the people that are actually like referred to your business that actually have like your URL, right? Like that you can look at this in your Google Analytics, right? If it's a referral, right? That means that it's a direct, like they literally typed in your address or your URL, right? And they're showing up on your webpage. You want to show them your reviews right there, so they don't have to hunt for them, right? Because like if they can see your reviews, they can click over, then they can see your Google business profile with all the different reviews on it, and they'll gain more trust from that. Like the last thing you want them to do is like back out and go do a Google search and like find some different company that maybe has a similar name, because that's another thing, is like brand dilution out there, and like they call them thinking it's you and they hire them and they're like, oh yeah, so-and-so, plumbing and HVAC, they were great. It's like, well, that wasn't who I called, right? So anyways, I like the importance of that for sure. So it doesn't surprise me.
You want the last one?
What's the last one?
No, go ahead. Did you have another question about this? Do you have another question about the online reviews, or?
No, I mean, it makes sense. I mean, it's interesting. The numbers always kind of like moving around, but I think that it's been pretty north of 90% for probably the last decade. So I think if you're not on board with reviews, then you missed the boat. Start swimming. I don't know, right?
And it's not easy, right? I mean, it's a time suck and it's a pain, but it's the cost of doing business these days. It's what you have to do. Obviously, there's best practices, how you should respond to everyone, not get personal and angry and that sort of stuff. Try to take things offline when you can or whatever. But it has to be done.
Oh, that was the thing you reminded me of, is showing bad reviews, right? Is I try to tell my clients, right? Because like, you will get a bad review. Like it's inevitable. If you're in business, there's just somebody, and I always make the joke. It's like, even if Jesus Christ himself came down from the clouds and installed their HVAC system, they'd be like, 3 stars. And you're like, really? Right? Like I just like that was perfection right there. Yeah. And so I think you have to realize you're going to get those. You're going to just take them on the chin. And to your point, like realize that these are actually more of an opportunity. And this is something I feel like I talk about so much, is like, guys, like your customers are just like you. When you go to Amazon, do you read all the positive reviews about something? No, you go and look at all the 1 and 2 star reviews and you figure out, hey, is that person a total lunatic? And they're just talking about nonsensical stuff. Or are they actually giving some legitimate feature concerns or some legitimate, like, breakdowns in communication or organizational, like whatever, like, do they have legitimacy to that? And if they do, okay, what's the response of the owner, right? Because that's another thing, is like the stat is like 88% of consumers are more likely to choose a business that responds to all their reviews. So like that, by the way, that's the other piece. Like make sure you respond to all your reviews, even if they're negative. I mean, negative ones, obviously, but also your positive ones. Like go congratulate and thank your customers for taking the time. They didn't have to do that. And now they're referring you 24/7, 365 online, right? Whenever somebody's searching for you. So you got to understand, like you said, yes, there's a lot behind that you have to do, but you have to realize that is an opportunity that to have business coming your way for a very long time. And so the last thing I'll say on that, though, is like when you're responding, like that's an extension of your customer service experience. That's how you get to communicate. Like, how do you handle stuff when it doesn't go right? Because things won't go right. And I think we all realized it with COVID, right? Just with supply chain issues and all that kind of stuff. Like, I'm sure we got more negative reviews than we wanted to, but how are you communicating to the customer, the importance of them and their family and their health and their, comfort? How important is that? So, yeah. Anything else you'd say to
Can I
that,
give you one?
Kyle?
Yeah, can I give you one more tip on this that I actually just heard a couple weeks ago? From it was actually a manufacturer, a marketing guy, that was
Yep.
really good at the digital marketing, and I hadn't thought about this. Maybe everyone knows this, and I was just so slow to the party here or whatever. But they said get the reviews as quickly as you can. Like try to say, hey, if you get us a review within the next 24 hours, and text them or email them, because
Yep.
that's when it's going to be the most positive. You never know what can go sideways, right? Maybe you did a great job and they love you and they give you a 5-star review, and then a week later they're at a barbecue and they're talking about it, and some guy goes, "Oh, really? You spent 10,000? I got mine done for only 8,000." And now they're kind of soured on,
Yeah.
on you and the experience a little bit, But they're not going to. But they've already been online and they've already said their piece. They're not going to go back and change it, or because they don't want to look stupid either. And it might be
Yeah.
not your fault, right? It might be, well, the reason that yours was 10,000 is because you got a higher SEER rating, or whatever it is. But there's a lot of stuff that can go sideways the longer you wait. So as long as they're happy, lock them into that review. And I thought, oh, that's a pretty good tip that I didn't know.
Well, and then to play off of that, right, that's a micro commitment that they made, right? And people, like, one of the Cialdini's principles of influence is people want to act consistent, right? So if they've
Yeah,
already said good things about you online, well, they're just going to dig their heels in and be like, well, my system's better because XYZ, and these guys have 35 years.
yeah,
Like, I mean, just like let them come to bat, and then that person's feeling stupid because they like, man, well, maybe I got screwed over by somebody who doesn't really know what they're doing. Like, do they have a
right.
membership plan? And then they're calling you for a membership plan, right? So to your point,
Yep.
but what you were saying in terms of the time, especially in our industry, HVAC, right? Like, what you're doing is so kind of like unseen after you're done, right? Like it's up there. Paint job, a little bit different. They're going to come home to that for a couple of weeks and be really excited. But yeah, you really got to hit them within 24 to 48 hours is really the most important window. So you should be, leveraging some sort of service that's a software that's just integrated into your CRM. And like, that's the most important, is it's got to be automated. And that's why I work so hard to do that for our clients. It's like, because if it's not automated and it's something manual, it's one more thing that your team has to do, right? Whether it's your techs out in the field or dispatch back in the office, like it doesn't get done. The ball drops. And like you're saying, you're opening opportunities to just get a black eye unnecessarily, so because you could have prevented that because the technology and the services kind of exist. So definitely want to tap into that. Love it.
Yep.
All right. So we got 3 more minutes. Let's wrap it up. This last topic. I know you said it was going to be a heated one, so maybe we just keep it short. People can't get too inflamed. No, I'm just kidding. Go ahead, Kyle. What was the last one they're talking about?
This is
Service agreements?
I think this is a no-brainer one. Yeah. So, and where we got service agreement, major agreements, what we're calling it. 75% of homeowners think service agreements is important. Yet 28% of contractors don't offer it. I wasn't surprised that the
Wow.
homeowners wanted the service agreement. 75%. I was surprised that 28% of contractors that we surveyed, and it was national. We had a good combination of people on the east, west, south, north, all that kind of stuff, weren't doing it. So that's certainly low-hanging fruit. We'd say how you want to own the customer, own the home. And that's something that all contractors should be doing. In addition, it ties back to the workforce development problem, right? And it's also keeping your guys busy year round with the maintenance agreements. How you're, here in Michigan in the spring and the fall, not much is happening in HVAC. So you go in and do it at those times. And so you don't have to cut hours and make people unhappy. So I was surprised at the 28% part of that.
Yeah. So you're saying 28% do it. That's only,
No, I'm sorry.
28?
Do not.
Oh, do not. Okay, gotcha.
20% do not. Yes. So 72 do, which is good, but
Okay.
28% not offering it. I thought that number would be lower. I was hoping that number would be lower.
Yeah. Well, and to be honest with you, I'm actually surprised that it is that low. Because I feel like most people, that a lot of this membership and it seems like it is a heated topic because a lot of people are like, well, I don't want to get them into a membership and I'm just taking money. And it's like, well, depends on how you structure your maintenance agreements or membership programs, right? I think that's the other thing too, is like, hey, maybe you don't like the taste of a maintenance program, like turn it into a membership program. There's always ways to just kind of reconfigure the value that you're driving to the customer. But to your point is like, yeah, you got to own the customer, and having a maintenance agreement or having a membership gives you the, it gives you the right, I guess I wouldn't say right, but like the responsibility to be reaching out to that person on a regular basis. Like you should be into that home every 6 months for something, right? And that's going to keep you top of mind, right? That's people, I think if you actually tracked it, you would be surprised that you probably get most of your referrals right after you come out, right? And why is that? Because you're top of mind. You just came out there, maybe somebody saw your truck, your van or whatever, and the neighbor asked them about you, right? So you got to understand, like, all that visibility does add up to all these little wins that just create this, compounding effect. And so that gives you a reason to be in that house. And especially, because I'm down here in Dallas, right? It's like everybody's always talking about the shoulder season. Well, you theoretically, if you're smart about your business, you shouldn't have a shoulder season, because you've got maintenance and membership programs that you're operating and executing on a lot of that stuff in that theoretical shoulder season to keep your techs busy, to keep them engaged, to create turnover opportunities, like all this stuff that should just be happening as a natural process, and just realizing there's an ebb and flow of your business, and that you're making sure that you're just timing all of this stuff so that you have that even sort of revenue throughout the year. Any kind of last final comments here, Kyle, as we kind of wrap up?
No, I think we kind of covered it all. I hope I didn't talk too much. I tend to get going here, and I like the topic. I love the industry, so it's fun to talk about. So I appreciate you having me on.
Well, and it shows, I think that's another piece, is this, like, what I love is just how many people in our space really are truly passionate about our industry, and just really, like, you can see that when they're talking, like, you want to say more, and there's other things that you could talk about, but you want to keep the podcast episode, tight and directed and all that kind of stuff. And so I appreciate you coming on and kind of sharing your insight. Now, I'm a member of the ACHR News. I'm a subscriber. I get the print edition and everything, which I think is really cool that you guys do still print. I don't know, there's something about having something physical in my hands, and it's almost silly. Like it's less than a venti coffee at Starbucks, right? Which I don't know how you're making any money. Like, I hope you're not living out of a trailer over there, Kyle. So, but just that being said, I think it's total no brainer for anybody to go get a subscription, at least get that into your physical hand if you can't read it digitally online, because you also have the digital version, which I think is great. But if somebody wants to maybe either get in contact with you, maybe they want to write an article, maybe they, I don't know, maybe they want to advertise something like that, maybe they got a product or something like that. What's the best way to kind of get in contact with you? If they've got follow-on questions to anything maybe you shared today, and they want to get a little bit more of an inside scoop.
Yeah, thanks, Chris. ACHRnews.com is the website. Has the homeowner study there, and we have 6 editors that are constantly writing about the industry. I say we try to write about anything that would help a contractor make money in their business. So it could be, different regulations, business management, new trends, new products. We try to cover it all. Remember when I first started, I was like, it could be a weekly magazine. Like, we get this much stuff about HVAC, because I didn't know the industry, and there really is that much information out there. So, you can go through the navigation. There's places to advertise and contact us and read about residential, commercial, business management, all that kind of stuff. And I'm Kyle Gargaro at ACHRnews.com. If you want to reach out to write for us or have any questions, we also have a Newsmakers podcast that's on the website, and I always say iTunes, that shows my age. Apple Podcast and Spotify. So check us out there, but and on social media. So kind of like, I'm sure what you're doing too. We have to be everywhere for everyone. We have to do videos and podcasts and stories, and we're on TikTok and Instagram. So kind of just find us everywhere. But if you hit ACHRnews.com, that's our hub, and that'll get you everywhere you need to go.
Honestly, I love it. We talked about age early on, because I still refer to it as iTunes, and I go, wait a minute, no, it's Apple Podcasts. Okay, yeah, say that right. So,
I know.
All good. Well, thank you so much again, Kyle. Really appreciate it. Again, that wraps up another episode of the Reputation Igniter podcast. Again, like, subscribe, hit that notification bell, write a review if you feel so inclined. It is one great way to get the word out and get this podcast in front of more people. All we want to do is improve our industry. As I always say, the greatest barrier to entry we want in our industry is the level of professionalism with which you have to execute your business, so that we only invite and only contend with the best people in the business. And so thank you so much for all that you do in our family, or in our communities, serving your families, their families, and everybody around you. Keep up the good work, and we'll see you on the next episode. Till then, take care.